Our next speaker is Sara Katzoff, who is the originator and co-artistic director of The Fringe.
Many skills and talents. It's so sad. Oh, there we go. Okay. So hello, my name is Sara Katzoff, and I'm one of the many co-founding artistic directors of Bazaar Productions and the Berkshire Fringe. Bazaar, as you see here, was a name that my collaborators and I came up with very early on to talk about the diverse marketplace of culture that we were inspired to create and produce right here in the Berkshires. So I actually grew up not too far from here on Rattler Avenue in Great Barrington. And before the talks began today, some of us were chatting, and I brought up the fact that I had been born in New York City, and my parents came here when I was very young to raise a family here in the Berkshires. And then as soon as my brother and I and many of our friends who sort of have similar stories were old enough, we went right back to New York City. And it's only very recently that we've come to see the wisdom of our parents, and we're starting to move back. So it's sort of all come full circle. So I've been back in the area now for just over a year, currently living in Pittsfield. So before I sort of launch headfirst into my talk, I want all of you to close your eyes for one moment. And I want you to think about something that you are incredibly passionate about. And I think that that's the reason why we're all here today, is to talk about passion, and the passion that all of us as speakers have. And all of you listening have something that you're passionate about as well. So on the count of three, you're all going to open your eyes, and you're going to just speak out whatever it is that you are passionate about. It could be a cause, it could be a person, it could be an activity that you do in your life, it could be a book, anything. So on the count of three, are you all ready? 1, 2, 3. Amazing. So that was like a beautiful chorus of passion resonating through this room. So one of the things I'm passionate about is theater. And I've been passionate about theater for as long as I can remember, ever since I was a little child growing up here in Great Barrington. And one of the things that I think theater is incredibly good at is reconnecting all of us to our passions and to our true sort of nature as human beings. So, I went too fast. There we go. So when I was in my early 20s, I had, again, grown up in the Berkshires, lived in New York City, and had traveled all over the country. And I was really inspired by something I'd experienced on the West Coast and also in Europe. This idea of fringe theater. And fringe theater was this movement that was sort of springing up everywhere that was really taking these artists that were young, that were telling these stories that were incredibly relevant, and they were telling them in sort of styles and techniques and modes of storytelling that I had never seen before attending theater growing up here, or even when my parents would take me to New York City or Boston to see shows. So I was really excited about this idea of fringe theater, and that it was this medium that was very much alive and current. When I experienced this for the first time in California, there were lines of people in their early 20s that would line up outside of the theaters. And I looked at the audience and I said, you know what, I have never seen that in the Berkshires before. We really need more diversity in terms of our audiences and in terms of how our audiences support culture in this community. So I took that idea and I dragged a few collaborators on board, and we started meeting and talking about ideas. And several years later, it took us quite a lot of time to sort of think about it and plan, but we formed this festival called the Berkshire Fringe. I'm going to just skip ahead here for a moment. These are my amazing collaborators, Peter Wise and Timothy Ryan Olson. We did a little photo shoot for the Boston Globe. So the Berkshire Fringe Festival was formed in 2005, and our mission was to, again, present diverse culture here in the Berkshires by emerging artists from all over the world that would really lend sort of a diverse and rich, just some photos, some samples of some of the shows that we've done. So over the course of the 10 years that the Berkshire Fringe has existed, maybe I'm going kind of fast here, we've produced work by over 500 artists from all over the world. We've presented approximately 200 free events, including live music and artist-led workshops. And we've really worked hard to sort of make our ticket prices affordable. And what we saw really early on in the process as festival organizers was that when ticket prices were affordable, we got a more diverse range of audiences, both in terms of age and in terms of demographics, in terms of income. People that had never come to theater before were all of a sudden coming to support the work that we were presenting at the Berkshire Fringe. And it was really exciting to have conversations with people who had never actually been to a play before, and really start to think about how theater was something that they could consider part of their lives and not something that they needed to attend for a special occasion or something that was sort of beyond their reach. And we thought about it in terms of our festival in a way that was similar to when you go to the movies. When you spend however much you spend on the price of a movie ticket and you go to the movie and you don't like the movie, you don't never go to the movies again. You say, oh, that one wasn't so great, but maybe I'll try to see something next week or next month. And so we wanted to really create that culture for our festival goers. And so we loved, and some of our festival attendees are here today, and I know I've had some amazing conversations with people, not just about what they liked that we've presented as festival organizers, but also what they didn't like. And then all of a sudden we have this conversation, not just about the work and it existing as this form of entertainment, but as this medium that really inspires dialogue and connection between people, and also the artists themselves. So the Berkshire Fringe was something that happened between 2005. We were based here in Great Barrington until 2013, and then in 2014 something really exciting happened. We had this invitation and this opportunity to move our entire operation to Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and to form a collaboration with Christina French, who's the owner of Shire City Sanctuary, which is this incredible art space and maker space in Pittsfield. And it was a big change for us moving from South County. But our first year in Pittsfield, which was also our 10th year, was this remarkable outpouring of audiences that we had never seen before. It was this wonderful bridge that was made between sort of Central and South County. Having grown up in Great Barrington, I often thought about Pittsfield as being in like another world, which I'm sure many of us sort of still kind of think about that invisible barrier. And that was something that was also really exciting to me too, was bringing people to Pittsfield, because there are really wonderful things happening there in terms of the cultural renaissance of that city. And they've been really welcoming and accommodating to us as artists of the Berkshire Fringe. So the Berkshire Fringe is currently on hiatus right now. We are taking a short sabbatical, if you will. The co-founders and I all started this when we were very young, and one of our missions in presenting the festival was to really have a place for our own work as young artists to be presented as well. And as soon as we sort of started getting into the nuts and bolts of organizing a festival of this magnitude, we were teaching ourselves how to file 990s, we were writing budgets, we were researching grants, and all of a sudden we became these sort of arts administration ninjas. And it sort of was such an incredible opportunity for all of us, but it really required our full attention. And so for us as young artists, we really weren't putting that into the cultivation of our theater company, which was sort of really something we wanted to be growing in conjunction with the Berkshire Fringe. So last year, we decided we were going to take a break to sort of step back, take stock of the last decade, and also sort of think about how we could grow and evolve into the future. So one of the things that all of us who've been involved in the organization of the festival have been starting up. My slide presentation is a little improvisational, and how it was picked up on that. Is there more? Yes. So I'm a little behind there. Here we go. So one of the projects that those of us that founded the festival have been really invested in terms of our own work as a company is the founding of Kick Wheel Ensemble Theater. And Kick Wheel is a theater company that has been created in collaboration with several of the artists that have come to the Berkshire Fringe, several new collaborators, many locally here in the Berkshire community, as well as artists in New York City, and we even know someone who lives in Ohio right now. So it's this sort of massive geographical place that's covered. And all of us who've gotten together are really interested in creating brand new original theater that explores and exposes what is most outrageously human in all of us. So that is what we are really interested in, is we're interested in finding stories that sort of inspire us, or ideas that inspire us. And we've been creating original work. This is some of us in the company, in a little bit of a clown car situation. And we've been creating a series of short pieces that have been inspired by common themes. This one was a piece called Mom Laid Down, which was inspired by a piece of text that was written by one of my collaborators, Timothy Ryan Olson. And we gave the piece of text to a dance choreographer, a filmmaker, several theater companies, and a composer. And everyone used this identical source material to create the original work. This was another piece we did called Frank. It had a hot dog in it. And then this was our first full-length piece that we created in 2010. We were invited to the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art up in North Adams, Massachusetts, to develop a new play called The Waypoint. It was by a really young writer named Iris Dotterman. We had sort of nurtured her young writing and development as part of the Berkshire Fringe a few years before. And this was really our first chance as a company to sort of come together to create like a brand new full-length original piece based on her writing. And one of the things we do as a company is, in addition to having actors and writers in the process throughout, and directors of course, we also work really closely with designers. And typically in theater what happens is the play comes first, and then the director and the producer cast the play with actors, and then the play is presented and produced for all of you, for the audience. And for us, what we're excited about doing is sort of tweaking and adjusting and sort of reinventing that model a little bit. So oftentimes, we have all of those different artists in the room at the very beginning, generating work and starting a conversation really early on. And we also invite audiences in very early in that process to start a conversation about the work. What's working, what's not working, what's resonating, what needs to be changed, what isn't really hitting, what people are really feeling connected to. And that dialogue, that conversation is something we're also really interested in sparking. Oftentimes, I personally feel that theater happens like in the dark, far away, and then our interaction with it as audiences is in the dark, and we're far away. And when the performance is over, there's not really that opportunity to sort of talk to the people that created it. So that's something that we really wanted to try and begin to introduce. Other photos from the Waypoint. Another piece we did called Dark, an end of the world play with music and an exercise bike. This was inspired by, we were working on this piece in 2012, right around the time that the world was supposed to end. And it was sort of in our cultural zeitgeist. And we sort of had this conversation with each other, how can we create a piece that sort of speaks to the end of the world, but in a darkly comedic way? Rituals. So the current project that we are working on, and I'm really actually delighted to announce that we've just received a really generous grant from the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation and the Martha Bush and Porter Funds to continue developing our new piece, is a play called Passage. And we're devising this play as a company. So again, it's a really unique process where as a company of artists we've gotten together, we've talked about an idea, and that idea was inspired by an NPR interview that I heard on the radio, driving in my car between rehearsals to many different places a few years ago, and it was with this writer, Anthony Brandt. And he wrote this book called The Man Who Ate His Boots. And the book is about the sort of tragic history and politics of the Northwest Passage, which is the famed Arctic trade route that connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through northern Canada. And there's lots of sort of gruesome history about men sort of charging into the wilderness and failing and being frozen out by nature and their boats freezing and, you know, just these sort of harrowing accounts of sort of hubris versus nature. And there was something about that idea because it seemed really resonant because that entire region of the world is now melting due to climate change. And so it's sort of this hotbed of political controversy right now. And you have all these sort of mild-mannered countries like Canada and Denmark, fighting over islands that are, half a mile, half a square mile. And so there's a lot of really interesting stories that are sort of coming out of this very current event that's literally sort of melting before our eyes. So we took that as source material, and for the past year, we've been getting together maybe once a month since we're all in so many different places. And we've been doing this devising process. So what we do is we get together, we have an idea, and then each of us sort of takes the lead. Some of us are more comfortable with writing, so we're doing a lot of writing. We use a lot of movement. We integrate a lot of props, and sort of start to kind of create this landscape of work. This summer, we were invited to develop the piece even further through a residency at the Millbrook School. So after many years of all of us sort of creating a home for artists as part of the Berkshire Fringe, we were finally able to sort of really just focus on being artists and not producers. So it was a real gift for us. These are just photos from this workshop production that we did. We collaborated with some really gifted young artist students as part of that as well. And lastly, one of the things we're really interested in as a company too is to take this subject, like climate change and the Northwest Passage, and figure out how, as a company of humans living in this world and dealing with this issue, we can approach this issue in a way that also gives itself to humor and a certain amount of levity. So that's really been our challenge, is we've just started to kind of put this piece together. Next summer, we hope to premiere it here in the Berkshires. And obviously the grant from the Berkshire Community Fund is a huge part of that process. And the last thing I just wanted to say about theater and my own passion for it is I wanted to connect back to something that the rabbi said very early on when we first started the talk, and he asked all of us to shut off our phones. Does everyone remember that? And I think that as a culture, we've increasingly become more connected to technology and more obsessed with technology. And moments like this, where we're all sitting around together, participating in something, and the theater are some of the few places where we're really asked to be present with each other. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be present with all of you, and I thank you for coming here and for spending your time and for choosing to be here. And I encourage all of you to go out and to see and support more theater. I will be here after at the reception if you have any questions. Thank you so much.